Hey everyone, and welcome to Outcast, where you are the outcast, but you are also not the outcast. My name is Levi, and we are glad to have you here today. Sit back, enjoy yourself, and take away something special from today's podcast. We plan to stick around. If you do, you can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Podbean. With that being said, enjoy today's podcast. All right, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another podcast. It's been a really long time since I've uploaded a podcast. I told myself no matter what, I'm just going to upload this podcast. So I just want to say sorry for the inactivity or just me not uploading any, podcasts. There's really no excuses, but there is a reason as to why I wasn't. And today's podcast is going to be primarily structured around that. Another reason I haven't been recording podcasts because I genuinely like when there's more people on the podcast. I really don't like when it's just me. It's not as fun when it's just me on the podcast because it's just I feel like alone. Like I feel like a sense of being alone, but I know there's people hearing and watching, so I guess that does help. And I'm also doing this for the point of like helping other people as well. So, I got to take that for account as well. But we're also going to be talking today about why I wasn't uploading, but in a different sense as to, people not just being here, but really like the deep inner meaning as to why I wasn't uploading and probably why my workflow hasn't been as good as it has for I don't know how long now. We're coming up on way too long. That's all I know. So here it is. I was doing some deep thinking these last couple days, and I started thinking to myself, like, dang, life ever since, I would say 2020 toward the end of 2020, has been just very odd. Like, I just don't feel as happy. And it just progressively got worse from that point on, I would say. There was no real, turning point. It just progressively got worse. And the reason I say that it progressively got worse is because my mindset on a lot of things got worse. And I'm pretty sure this happened to a lot of people over COVID. And what do I mean by that? Well, one of the things that I was really good at prior to COVID was taking up a lot of my time with a lot of different things. And when you are so busy in the world and so occupied by the things going on in the world, you don't really get a chance to identify who you are, nor think about a lot or think really at all, to be honest. Like, sure, you're thinking about like your test coming up, you're thinking about going to work. In other words, just distractions from finding out more about yourself. So it was huge to me when I kind of like lost all of that stuff. And a lot of people don't know this, especially if you're just finding me through the podcast. I used to go to school. I was like doing social media like I am right now. There was a lot that I just had on my plate. I was working a part-time job. Like I just did a lot. And so I never got to have, I would say, the opportunity to have what I have right now, where I'm learning so much about myself and about life that I never once ever imagined me learning, which is great, but it's also very difficult because with a hard time comes a lot of wisdom, and wisdom is very hard to handle. And this time has really taught me how negative the world really is. And that's kind of what we're going to dive into. So the world is a very negative place, but it's also a very cool place. Like there's cool views to look at. There's people, there's good and bad people, you know what I mean? But when you really learn about the world, you're like, dude, this place is corrupt, man. Like there's a lot of stuff wrong, with the world. And so I kind of had like my first hands-on experience with that because I wasn't distracted by the things in the world for me to really like have a good view of the world. And so when I finally did, it just nested into my brain. Like I just got super negative. And that just, it just nested in me. Like just the negativity of the world nested within my head and my heart. And it just kept producing really negative outcomes in my life. And I would say I'm still struggling to get out of that. But the fact that I'm even here on the podcast right now shows that, I'm taking the steps out of it. So like I said, the reason why I haven't been uploading the podcast because of where my mindset was for quite some time. Like, sure, yes, I got the podcast up and starting. I was really just like forcing myself to do this podcast. Like there was no true joy. Like I knew deep down I really wanted to do this podcast, like in my heart, to help people and to just really talk about some of the things I've learned. which is a lot for a 22-year-old. And I'm not trying to boast or anything, be like, yeah, like I know so much more than like the average 22-year-old, because I probably do know a lot more than the average 22-year-old, but I don't know everything. But anyway, so yeah, one of the reasons I hadn't been uploading on the podcast where my mindset was. And when your mindset's negative, it's going to produce negative results. And for me, those negative results were just a lack of productivity. And I caught myself way too many times during the day just thinking. And that's bad, because when you think, I don't think a lot of people know this, like our brains are programmed to problem solve. And so when I saw all of these problems in the world, and I think this happened to a lot of people during COVID, this is coming from someone who actually, and hold on, let me backtrack. The reason I think that this has happened to a lot of people in COVID, why people got a lot of depression and anxiety, is because they got a chance to see what the real world is like, and they got a chance to see a lot of the things going maybe wrong in their life, things that they needed to change, because you're not distracted anymore by your job, which is a great thing that COVID allowed a lot of us to experience. But when you realize this stuff, it can be very painful. Like I said, wisdom can be very painful. And so when I look back at COVID, and like not just me, because I'm pretty sure a ton of other people experience what I've experienced. And I even talked to someone who's they're like a manifest coach, and I don't really believe in manifesting, as some of you guys know, because like I believe in God, and like nothing happens the way you ordain it to happen at all. Like that never goes that way. Like you can't predict the future as a human, so like that's why I don't believe in manifestation, because you might manifest something that you like not really, like you can go towards something you like, but it's not going to be the outcome. You might still enjoy it, but it's not going to be the primary outcome of something that you pictured. Like it didn't go exactly as you pictured, you know what I mean? So anyway, but yeah, so I talked to a manifestation coach, and he literally said that one of the things that he noticed over COVID was just like an increase in the field that he studies in, which is manifestation. And, although I don't really like the whole idea around manifestation, it just showed me that people are, realizing a lot about themselves, and realizing that they have untapped potential that they really haven't reached into. And there's a lot within them that they were just distracted by from the world. And so, like I said, a lot of good came out of it, because a lot of people realize that. But then there's also a lot of bad. And I was on the bad hand side of things. Like, I just took in everything for the first time, being this kid just right out of high school. And then COVID hits, and then like I'm like, dude, the world is like this twisted, you know what I mean? Like I experienced betrayal, I experienced all this stuff, and instead of just going good, like good, like I don't know if you guys have heard, some kid named Peter actually sent me this video with Joko Wilkins saying good after something bad, or something goes wrong. And I didn't realize like how powerful that really is, because my experience in the real world was not, like I just said, good. So I latched onto a lot of that negativity and never saw the good in any of what was happening at all. I would just constantly just be in a negative mindset of how things were going in my life, which honestly, it sucks to look back at, because like, you have to dig yourself out of that now. Obviously, like God has come into my life, and I've talked about on my pages before. And, maybe if you're new here to the podcast, I do like to dive into my faith sometimes on here. So maybe you're not into, Christianity or God or whatever it is. You don't have to take everything I say to heart, even though I would like you to. But yeah, so God came into my life, and just like, now it's just a matter of working out of that mindset. And it's just great, because it's kind of like day by day. It's really painful because it's kind of like a change I have to go through. But yeah, it's just being negative is really tough on the mind, and it just really results in less productivity. Because if you're in a positive state of mind, you're going to be productive, because you're like, yay, like everything's going good. Like your brain's not focused on a bunch of problems. Like it's just focused on like, all right, boom, boom, boom. We got to get this done. We got to get this done. It's problem solving in a very like positive way. But when you don't have anything that's necessarily something to work on, but your brain knows it's wrong, it's just going to fixate on it and go, we have to fix this, even if it's negative. So just constantly think of negative things. That's a scientific thing. It's just the way your neurons in your brain work. So your brain will actually go, this is easier just to think about negative things. And then your body all of a sudden is like, this sucks. Like I don't want to do anything, because your brain is just producing these negative things over and over again. And it causes your serotonin and your dopamine levels to crash, which are, your happy hormones and, your discipline, motivation, drive hormones. So yeah, that's pretty crazy. And, in my experience, like, back when I was in school and stuff, although I was distracted by the world and didn't really get to tap into who I am and like the truth of who I am, which is literally just like the depiction of what God sees me as, which is a great person, a lovable person, a very happy and courageous person. Like the fact that I'm even able to say that about myself, sometimes I feel like I don't deserve it, but I know it's true. The fact that I got to see that was great because, although, like I said, my mind was in a very negative state and I wasn't thinking very positively about myself, I still got to hear the truth. And you guys can too, because it's true about all of you guys listening as well. But yeah, like I was saying, when you're in a positive mindset, and like I said, although like I was consumed by the world, like I was very productive. And a lot of you guys probably felt that way too. And when you're not productive, especially for people like me, it causes a lot of anxiety because I'm used to that's my frequency. That's how I operate. You know what I mean? So then when like my brain is constantly fixated on problem solving of problems that aren't really actually going to get solved because I don't have the power to do it, it really just takes a toll on my brain and the chemicals being released and then results in really negative actions, which essentially for me wasn't enough actions. So I just found like, you know what, I'm a good guy, and this goes for you guys too. You can just say this: I'm a good person. There's nothing wrong with me at all. We all have our little things wrong with us, but you can just tell yourself you're a good person. You're trying your best. You're going to, create a schedule. You're going to stick to it. You can set new goals and stuff, start winning and take on those little goals again. And essentially what I'm trying to say is you can relearn how to be productive again on your own, which is actually good because if you look at it, maybe you could find yourself being an entrepreneur and starting a business of your own and being the boss of your own time. Funny enough, I actually dreamed one day of kind of like being the boss of my own. Little did I know how painful that would be. You know what I mean? So that is painful. It's not painful for everyone. That's why you shouldn't compare yourself to people on the internet. That's one of the things I've learned, especially in this world with like trying to think more positively, is like, great, like that person got lucky, like I'm happy for them, like good. That means I just have to work that much harder. You know what I mean? Like there's good in that, no matter like how hard your brain wants to be envious and stuff, because your brain is trying to problem solve and how to be more like them so that you can get it faster. But really what you have to do is like, you know what, I just have to like, I have to sit in the long haul. Like that's fine. Like things are just going to take longer. And for me saying that right now, I can literally feel in my heart and in my mind, my brain going like, no, screw that. But like, I know deep down, like as long as I can program my brain to think like that, you're good to go. You know what I mean? So it's really tough to kind of program your mind into thinking more positively despite the situations that you're in. Because some people go through some really tough stuff. And like, this was my first encounter with tough things in my life. Like I try not to think about the fact that I still live with my parents, because who cares? You know what I mean? You're listening to this podcast like, whoa, what does this kid know? What is he talking about? Still living with his parents. I still think that I still withhold wisdom from my experience. I didn't always live with my parents. I took a chance out in the real world, moved down to Houston, didn't work. Big smack in the face, had to move back, but that doesn't, despite my, accountability and some of the things that I'm saying are actually very helpful. Because sometimes people could have a podcast and be doing it out of their parents' basement, but they could be, racking in a million viewers, listeners, and you just have no idea. But like I even mentioned, I'm practicing living this stuff out, and while I practice, I might as well just help other people practice to live that way too. But another thing when it comes to negative thinking is it causes, to me, so if like you were to take a brainstorm bubble, and I'm pretty sure you've done these in school before, where you put, let's just say you put the word negative in the middle of a piece of paper, right? And then you draw a big circle around it. And when you branch off of those things, you can put depression, you can put anxiety, and you can put stress. Stress and anxiety kind of go hand in hand. But to me, it's slightly different. And then off of that, then you can get like the little things that come with it. So for anxiety, it could be like OCD disorder. It could be like heart rate increase. It could be racing mind. For depression, it could be like, sadness. It could be like darkness. You could bubble off even more. And then with stress, it could be like increase in heart rate. It could be frustration. Like you could just bubble off more. So when you really think about all of this stuff that came out of COVID, it was just primarily of negative thinking that ate people alive. And the thing is you really have to learn how to reprogram your brain into thinking more positively. And, that's possible. For me, God gave me the chance to think more positively, and I think that you guys can too. Through God, or what, maybe it's not God, maybe it's something else. But I really want to say this. Maybe you're trying to consider something of how to get, out of a negative state of mind. And, it all comes down to, and this is like very religious to a degree, and it's taking every thought captive. Because if you have a negative thought, you got to tell yourself, like, bro, that thought belongs in the garbage. That's not me. Like, I'm not Mr. Negative. You know what I mean? Because once you allow so much of that in, like I said, for me, it embedded in me and made me very negative, and I just genuinely did not like that. And now that I'm fighting to get my way out of it, it hurts, it sucks, and I don't want anyone else to go through that pain, but I know there's other people that are already in that current situation. So yeah, it's just kind of getting a hold on your life, because you do have the free will and the decisions to make to go, okay, how am I going to do this, And the thing about, a negative mindset is it's the hardest to change. Like, you can change, to me, a diet much easier than you can a mindset. Like, that kind of goes hand in hand, like a diet and mindset, but at the same time, like, when it's strictly just a mindset and it's like set itself so deep in you, it's just, oh my goodness, dude, it's tough. Like, especially for some, like for me, I look at myself, I'm like, dude, I'm way too young to like be thinking this negative. Like, life is good, you know what I mean? And I think even if you're 30, 40, 50, like, life is still good. There's good in this world, and you really just have to change your perception, because a lot of it, be honest, guys, is about perception. So if something bad happens, like, for example, I think about Texas not working out for me, I'm like, good. That was a huge learning opportunity. Like, I got to learn that, like, I don't enjoy being down there. Instead of looking at, like, dude, why did that happen? Like, I should have never moved down there. And I've said that plenty of times to myself. I'm not going to lie. Like, I shouldn't have went down there. But for me, I'm like, I learned that that's not the place for me. Good. Like, I didn't belong there. You know what I mean? And it's so hard to believe that, but it's true, because, like, I'm back here. Like, that's true. Like, I didn't belong there, because look where I ended up. I ended up back at home. So, it's really just, trying to change your mindset, because I'm telling you, like, a negative mindset is not a productive mindset, because I remember the times where I was productive, and the times when I'm productive, I tell you, I get so many things done. And one good example of this is in 11th grade, I decided to throw javelin. I wasn't, fast enough to keep up with the 100-meter guys, even though I ran 11.4 in the 100-meter dash. Yeah, we had some fast dudes on our team. But so the javelin coach pulled me aside and was just like, I think you could do javelin. And I was like, sweet, like, I'll just give it a go. Did javelin, and like, my mind was set in such a positive way. Like, he was a very encouraging coach. Like, when you have a coach too who's very encouraging and encourages you to do something good, it's very just, it just changes, like, the course of the game, to be honest. Because I was actually very, like, upset that I couldn't be on the 4x1 team or run the 100-meter dash as fast as the other guys. And so just being able to do javelin was like, whoa. So I ended up doing javelin, and he was so positive. I had a girlfriend at the time who was very positive about it. I was happy about it, because, like, although my throws weren't that good, I was still, like, learning something new, and I was picking up on it really fast, and I would go home and practice, and, like, just seeing that improvement was just, like, motivating me to just keep going, and I was super happy. Next year rolls around. Well, actually, hold on, let me say this. At the end of the season in 11th grade, I changed up my throw a little bit, and I started doing a bounce step, and it was hurting my back, and I just could not stop doing the bounce step. Like, all of a sudden, it was just like a habit. And so the next year comes around, I'm in 12th grade, my senior year. I'm getting, like, offers from colleges. My senior year, I'm like, dude, all I did was one season, my first every year of javelin. And I'm getting, like, offers from schools already. Like, this is crazy, and I'm not like a javelin build. I'm literally 5'8" at the time, 150 pounds. And so, like, just thinking about that, I'm like, dude, how was I even throwing? But in 12th grade, I started to have relationship issues. I started to look more on athletic.net. If you guys don't know what athletic.net is, it's a place where you put all the rankings of all the students. I started looking on there way more than I needed to, just looking at my competition, seeing how good their throws were. And then, like, I also was, I don't know, my friends were kind of in a bad place at that time too. Like, none of my friends did track, but all in 11th grade, they all did. My girlfriend actually quit track in 12th grade at the time. Well, my ex-girlfriend quit track. So it was just like a feeling of very loneliness. Like, my coach was very positive, But it was just hard, when you're going through relationship stuff and then like, you switch up your throw and you're not throwing as good. Like just realizing like how much your mental has on like your productivity, because back in my 12th grade year, I was not working as hard toward javelin as I was in my 11th grade year. So it just goes to show, man, like when you are in a productive, like positive mindset, bro, you're kicking ass. Like you are unstoppable. So for me, that was just really extremely tough. That was a tough time in my life. And then especially recently with like the whole Texas thing, like I keep referring back to, it was a very same scenario. I went down to Texas, my first year of doing this social media thing. I'm kicking ass. I'm being super productive. I'm not caring about anyone else. I'm focused on my own race. I got support around me. Second year comes around. I got a girlfriend who's not so supportive of it. It's an ex. I kind of don't have my friends around. My friends are grown up doing their own thing. I'm alone a lot. I'm in my thoughts. I'm looking at other people's content, comparing myself to them. Very same scenario. What happens? Doesn't work out. So it just goes to show you, like, your mindset is pretty much everything. Like what goes in comes out. So you really got to guard your heart. And you got to guard your mind, and honestly keep your peace. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. Just really give examples from my life and just show you guys how important it is to maintain a positive mindset despite the scenarios and the things that you're going through. Because at this point in my life, from having that pattern of like, oh, something's going good and then something goes negative, I've been like, you know what? That's it. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, that was the last time and that's the last straw. I'm always going to be grateful. I'm not going to, slip up into negativity. I'm always going to look for the positive in things. So yeah, that's going to do it for this podcast. I'm sorry I've been gone for so long, guys. It's glad to be back. I'll try to be more consistent with this. Like I said, still trying to pick myself up out of this little mess. So if I'm not as consistent, it's because I'm struggling to pick myself out of this mess. But anyway, that's going to do it for this podcast. I hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Really quick before you leave, I just wanted to say thank you for tuning in today's episode on Outcast. If you liked today's episode, consider hitting that follow button. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, and YouTube. Also, there's a donation link below to help support the podcast. Again, thank you, and I can't wait to have you for the next one.